Hello drone racers. Today we're going to take a look at updating one of these. This is a FrSky XSR receiver. I'm currently in the middle of one of my builds and upgrades and I'm adding telemetry and I ran into a problem. I'm going to start by showing you what the problem is. I've just gotten this hooked up on the telemetry page. I'm going to go and discover new sensors and it will go through and discover everything connected to this. This XSR is connected to a UART on the radio, and it should be able to discover all the additional sensors and information that comes out of it. Mainly I'm looking for VBAT. So there we go. I unplugged it, plugged it back in, and it discovered all of these sensors. But you'll notice as soon as it's set up, these flashing lights means I'm receiving and updating information. And those are the default ones from the receiver. From my flight controller, I'm not getting anything. I have default VFAS and temperature and acceleration, and none of it's updating. It updated at first, you could see it flashing, but now it's not doing anything. In order to fix this, I have to update the firmware on the receiver itself because this is basically a bug. So to get the firmware, you have to go to FrSky's website. It's pretty easy to find. It's FrSky-rc.com. And here for me, it's the very first one. If you don't see it as the very first one, you'll see receivers. And then you can select your XSR. This should work pretty similarly for most of them, but I'm specifically doing the XSR in this case. So there we have, and here we have the firmware. So I don't want beta firmware. Now this is just a few days ago for me. So this is very recent firmware, and it improves the capability between the S port and the F3 flight controller, which is exactly the problem that I'm having. I'm gonna download this and save it to a file. So I've got a file folder where I've been keeping things for a long time, and I just saved that file into the XSR firmware folder. This file is zipped, so I'm just gonna go under its folder structure here. In this case, I'm just gonna grab this and copy it so it's not zipped anymore. And here are the files that I'm looking for. This download comes with two different files. One is an FCC. I'm in the United States, so that's the one for me. The other is LBT, which is the EU version of the firmware. There's been a couple different series of the EU firmware, but this is the one that we want in this case, if you're in that location. For me, I just want the FCC. So if you have a cable, you can plug your Tyrannus into your computer and show up, but those cables aren't that common anymore. I actually couldn't find one, so what I'm gonna do here is just pop out the SD card, and because I've used so many of these cards and everything now, I have plenty of adapters, and I'll just pop that in my PC. So now what I'm gonna do is copy this file and then go down to my SD card, and this is the default load on my version of the code. I'm running 2.19 still. I've not upgraded to 2.2 yet. So for right now, I just want to put this in firmwares. I've created an XSR folder, and now I'm just going to paste the firmware there. So now it's on the card, and that's all I need. That was simple enough. Now we just pop the card back in, and I have the file that I need on the radio. Now the big question is, how do we get the firmware onto here? If you saw my awesome F200 video, you'll see that I made a adapter dongle. And this is what I used to connect to the radio. This is the cable that comes with the XSR radio. And I had this wired up to a male servo lead so I could connect it to the flight controller. And in this case, it's very convenient that I've got that because that's what I'm going to use to make this work. The one thing I had to change is we have ground, power, which is 5 volts, and then when you're connecting this to a receiver, you need this white cable is all the way on the edge. What I did to do this upgrade is I just popped that cable out and moved it to the middle, which is the telemetry port. So in this case, I was just able to move what I needed, and then I have that connected to the 3 pins of a servo lead. Then I just take a standard servo lead that I've got, and I can just connect this end here, and there I've got that matched up, black, red, white. The tricky part, and the part I did wrong the first time, so you have to be very careful, is this side you have to reverse the power and the ground connections because of the way it connects to the Tyrannus, which is actually how you do the next step. On the back of the Tyrannus, you have to open up the battery door, and there's the 5 ports here to connect an external module. And what you do is take your new lead and connect it to the bottom 3 ports. So I'll just slide this on. So the middle port is providing power. The second from the bottom is ground, and the bottom is telemetry. It's the signal wire, but it's not the signal to go to a flight controller. It's actually the telemetry port. If you're looking at the manual for this, that's the port you have to go into. Then I just plug this in here, and I've handled the physical connections. Now back on the radio, I've got it connected, and I'm gonna hold down the menu button, which will take me to the radio setup. I go through page to the SD card, which is page 2 of 9 on my version, down to firmwares, the XSR folder that I made, and there's my one FCC file. Hit enter on that. I want to flash an external device, and I'll turn this so you can see what happens. There we go. Once I do flash external device, it powers on the card and it starts writing to it. So it takes 2 or 3 minutes and it updates the firmware on this receiver for you. Done. Okay, now we exit out, power everything down, get it disconnected, and I'm going to install this receiver back in the quad. So because I updated the firmware on it, this isn't quite sure what to do. I actually need to go in here and delete these sensors and then discover new sensors again. There we go. I want to discover sensors. I had to reboot the model one time just so you know for it to show up right. But now I have my VFAS and it's accurate, and you can see everything updating very rapidly for me. So that's exactly what I want. Now this will be useful for this model. I am going to go in just to fix my voltage source. For some reason got set weird. I'm going to change that to VFAS. And that, my screen, I like to be able to go in and click that to go to VFAS. Now I see my voltage right there on my screen. So that worked. That's how you update an XSR firmware module. Hopefully this will help somebody because it took me a while to figure this out. If you found this useful, subscribe, like it, and comment down below if you want me to do the same process with any other receivers. I'd be glad to do it with any that I've got available. I normally am one that I won't upgrade firmware on things unless I need to. So this is a case where I needed to, and it immediately fixed my issue. So it was really nice. So until next time, remember, make sure you reverse those power cables or your radio gets really pissed off.